E la cintura?
Non ce l'ho.
È un grosso rischio. Ricordati sempre di allacciare la cintura di sicurezza e falla allacciare anche a chi sta dietro. Guidare non è uno scherzo. Va bene?
What did the Pope's visit in September mean for the Irish Church?
Well, of course, the visit was to the UK, which is our neighbouring country, and we have been observing, because we have a very close cultural affinity with this country, we have been watching very closely what was happening, and while it's, you know, of interest to us, it's also an objective phenomenon because their culture is in other ways quite different. For example, I mean, Britain is, has been predominantly, it is identified with Protestantism, although in recent years it has emerged that gradually the Roman Catholic population, active practicing population, is now the greatest single faith group in the United Kingdom, although the Muslims are not far behind. So we've been watching these things, but also more fundamentally we've been watching the reaction of the culture, which was expressing itself before the Pope came in very, very vigorous, very angry protests and very quite unpleasant, really, confrontational engagement with the visit by certain atheistic and secular groupings. So we were watching all this because, of course, for us in Ireland, you know, there were similar questions, but in a different context because we are still nominally Catholic, but in fact becoming more and more hostile to Catholicism in a cultural sense as well. So again, we were watching this, and as Catholics, you know, who are interested in these things, and we know to an awareness of what the Pope is actually saying and so on, it becomes quite important to look at this event. Fundamentally, what we see with the Pope is that there is this struggle, in this drama, where he is addressing this corruption of reason, this reduction of reason. And really, to the great surprise of everybody, saying everything is not as you think. Everything is not, this is not the only way you can see things. And this, in spite of everything, the visit shows that this is beginning to come out. Because, of course, as I said today in the meeting, the Pope must speak every time in public through the megaphone of his enemies. You know, they control the megaphone. They say, this is what he means, this is what he said. I mean, I have written myself many instances of this where he says one thing and it becomes something else. You know, it is reduced all the time. You know, if the Pope talks about reason and the engagement, as he did in Madrid, for example, last time he was there, he talked about the engagement between the secular world and the religious world. You know, it becomes, the articles are about abortion. You know, this is the terrible tragedy of our media, because the reduction is very much centred now in the media, because they constantly, every day, every hour, every minute, bombard us with this pseudo-rationality, this Anglo-Saxon, you know, mathematical language, which is really insisting to us. Everything is clear, everything is measured, everything is already proved. There's no need to think anymore. And the Pope is saying, no, nothing is concluded, nothing is finished. The questions are all open.
How do you see what is happening in the UK, the scandals in the media, the riots, etc., in the light of the Pope's visit?
What has happened in Britain is very interesting now because of the number of events which have emerged in the recent past, which really indicate a kind of a disintegration of the mainstream culture in the United Kingdom. I mean, we've had the financial crisis, which of course is a worldwide phenomenon, but nevertheless in Britain and in Ireland as well, this collapse really is being explained in all kinds of ways. You know, a recession, you know, it is to do with the banking industry. You know, there are all kinds of rational explanations, when really the explanation comes from deep within the human person. You know, because it is about the desire of the human person, which the system that man has created is incapable of satisfying. This is really the message. This idea has been avoided. there are other issues as well. I mean, recently in the United Kingdom there was the phone hacking controversy where a number of newspapers owned by Rupert Murdoch's company, News International, were found to have been eavesdropping on the conversations of celebrities and royal family members and so on in order to get stories, and they were hacking into their phones to get this information. And this has really shaken the media in Britain in a very profound way. Not least because there is a suspicion that there is much more to this story to emerge, that there is many, many more things. That, for the last 3 or 4 years now, since the economy erupted, there has been this phenomenon whereby it seemed that the last moral institution in the country was the media. It was interrogating everything else. It was examining everything, shining the searchlight on everything else. Now the searchlight must be turned round, and the journalists themselves must face into it. And this is very disquieting for them. And so, these things all together are creating a lot of disquiet in the society, because it seems that there is no solid ground on which to place a value, to place an idea that is, solid and not necessarily absolute, but even reliable. And I think these are symptoms which are now beginning to percolate in the society. And in the very recent past, we've had these outbreaks of rioting, which really showed a very, very upsetting and disquieting pattern. Because at first, it was clear, obviously, and there is this element of what they call the underclass, uneducated, poor people on welfare who are at the bottom of the society emerging. And certainly there was an element of that. But as it became clear, there were many other elements as well, that middle class people, as so-called, people who are relatively well off, relatively prosperous, or opportunistically joining in the looting of shops because they saw the opportunity. And this really has disturbed the political establishment very profoundly, because for the first time they've actually seen that as a consequence perhaps of some ideological conditions which were unacknowledged, there has been a disintegration of moral values within society. And perhaps now for the first time there is the possibility that people will begin to say, oh, those are values that the religion, the Catholicism, that Christianity inculcated in our children. Perhaps we have done ourselves some damage by being so hostile to those values and so hostile to the institution which represents them and so hostile to the Pope. I think there is this further unraveling of this scenario to happen yet.
With respect to the uncertainties of this period, how can the title of the meeting provide an answer?
It's, when you say the phrase first, I say it to a friend of mine and she says, oh, but this is obvious, my existence is already obvious. I said, no, it's not. This is the point. That the trick which is this false rationality creates in the culture is to make you take, I don't become aware of my existence, I take my existence for granted. And I begin my exploration of reality outside of myself. There are many tricks in our society, in our culture, which it is not alerted to. It's the people are, they take everything for granted. They'll go through a life not thinking about the mystery and the wonder of their own existences. And I think this is really, what the Pope is hinting at. I mean, really it's very difficult to communicate this in this, particularly I find in English, because really you tend to go into superlatives, and it sounds almost like poetry that you were speaking. You cannot be talking about concrete reality, it seems. And this is the great difficulty to communicate these things. So this phrase is very, very, I think, important as almost a signal. No. Yes, you can see it in a bland way. You can think, oh, it's obvious. Oh, if it's so obvious, why say it? This is the thing about Giussani's phrases, that you actually, that you think, okay, this looks obvious, but maybe it's not. Maybe behind this is another meaning. And I think this is the shift that the society needs to make. It's a shift from what is obvious to what is not so obvious. And that shift really is also this shift from here to there, in a way. That at the meeting today I quoted from C.S. Lewis, his wonderful phrase, men without chests, as a way of describing the culture that we have created, which is, the gut reaction, yes, the response, emotional in a way. the head, the analysis, yes. But what is missing is the heart, which mediates between the two, which enables a reconciliation of the response and the intellect. This is missing from our culture, you know, and it's almost as if, as I said, somewhat jokingly, but not quite, that, you know, what we need is a heart implant, that the heart has been removed from our culture and we need to find a heart somewhere, because it seems to me, you know, this is the missing part, because what is missing from our culture is really the lack of staying with the other. It's the lack of which is really that capacity to empathize with the condition of the other, with not in some ideological way that lists somebody as a victim and says we must deal with their problems because this is what our ideology says. Or it is not a question of simply making nice speeches. It's a question really of remaining with the other's situation, remaining with the humanity of the other person, each person and every person, so that you begin to understand something about yourself as well, you know, and of the community that we are part of and the society that we are part of. And I think this is really missing. You know, when you actually look, last week I spoke in a shrine in Ireland, Knock Shrine, you know, at the annual novena. And you know, there were many thousands of people there, many of them the wounded and the broken people of our culture, you know, who really are not spoken about in a mainstream way. They are spoken about in a, you know, in the context of the health services, or, you know, in some patronizing way perhaps by a politician, but not understood as being the same as us, the same as me. You know, their wound is my wound. If not literally today, then maybe tomorrow. And this is the part of the loss of the heart, that we have lost this empathy with each other, with one another. And I think this is therefore, you know, that part of, again, that existence becomes an immense certainty, you know, that we have disinhabited our own humanity, and we need to re-enter it.
Today you spent the day at the meeting. Can you tell us about a particular episode that illustrates this certainty?
Oh yes, well, I just came from the exhibition of the apostles and the house of St. Peter, and you know, this really beautiful exhibition, which you know, follows what to me is one of the most beautiful things that Giussani has given us, which is this capacity to enter into the Gospels as real happenings, to become part of this. You know, when I heard this first, you know, after many years of listening to the Gospels, when I heard Giussani, the way he would speak about John and Andrew and the day they saw Christ for the first time, and the way they were drawn to him, you know, this was a whole new way for me of verifying everything. And the exhibition really takes this a little further, because this exhibition allows you to go into these places, into the garden, and you know, to see the apostles, to see where they worked, to see where they saw Christ, to see the house of Peter, and see how each thing is verified factually, but also to feel the reality of it, to feel that it is a part of contemporaneous reality. You know, that there is nothing to learn in a way, but you know, it's not a question of learning facts and stories. This is a story that is real now, and it is of this world now. And this is, to me, I think, what goes back to this question of engaging the heart, bringing us into the emotion of that. You know, it's not a sentimental thing, it's a powerful engagement with, you know, to be there really in one's heart.
E la cintura?
Non ce l'ho.
È un grosso rischio. Ricordati sempre di allacciare la cintura di sicurezza e falla allacciare anche a chi sta dietro. Guidare non è uno scherzo. Va bene?